All right, so today we're going to really dig into the career of Tom Cruise. We've got this excerpt from Tom Cruise, Hollywood's Unstoppable Force. And I gotta say, I'm already pretty fascinated by this book. I think this is really going to be insightful for anyone who really wants to understand, like, what makes someone tick.
Yeah, it's a story that doesn't really fit the mold of the typical Hollywood narrative.
Right, like you think Tom Cruise, you think of just the global superstar, like the action hero. But this book actually paints a really different picture. It talks about all these obstacles he had early on, moving all the time, dyslexia, that's got to be tough for any kid, let alone a kid with Hollywood dreams.
And it kind of makes you wonder, if those challenges are actually part of what shaped him. His incredible drive and work ethic. It's almost like he took those struggles and turned them into fuel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, would he be the Tom Cruise we know today without all that?
It's impossible to know for sure. But there's definitely a link between those rough early years and the ambition he's had his whole career.
Yeah, that's really inspiring, like an against all odds story. And speaking of defying expectations, what about Risky Business? I mean, that underwear slide scene is iconic. It's instantly part of pop culture.
It's funny, though, that scene is mostly comedic.
Yeah.
But it still shows something about Cruise, right? There's just this confidence there and charisma that shines through.
Oh, totally. And then just a few years later, he cements himself as a leading man with Top Gun. I mean, everyone wanted to be Maverick after that movie. It was huge worldwide.
Yeah, Top Gun wasn't just a hit. It was this cultural moment. And it created what you could call a Tom Cruise brand. The intense prep, the commitment to doing his own stunts, that dedication to going further than anyone else. Even in those early roles, he was setting the stage for what would become his signature approach.
And that approach, I mean, it really takes off with Mission Impossible. We're talking decades, billions of dollars worldwide, and some of the craziest stunts ever filmed.
And what's interesting is that Mission Impossible, it's more than just action. It's almost its own genre, right? This constant pushing the limits, the spectacle. And so much of that is driven by Cruise himself.
I mean, he's scaling the Burj Khalifa, hanging off planes, holding his breath for minutes underwater. It's insane. But, for a lot of people, Mission Impossible is all they think of with Tom Cruise. They forget he's done some serious dramatic roles, too.
Yeah, people put him in that action star box. But then you look at Rain Man, Born on the 4th of July, even Jerry Maguire. You see an actor who is willing to challenge himself, to play all these different characters. And he's gotten 3 Oscar nominations. That's huge.
Yeah, it's like he's constantly defying expectations, both with the physical stuff and the types of roles he chooses.
And that's what keeps his career so interesting. He's always evolving, trying new things. And this brings us to another side of his story, the controversies.
Yeah, you can't talk about Tom Cruise without that, especially all the stuff around Scientology. It's been a big debate, and sometimes it overshadows his work.
Well, it's definitely affected how the public sees him. And then there's that Oprah thing, the couch jumping, which just blew up in the media and made people really speculate about his personal life.
It felt like a real turning point, but it is interesting how he handled it. He didn't hide. He actually used it to kind of address things head on, in his own way, of course.
He also seemed to use those times to reinvent himself a little, taking roles that made fun of his own image, like Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder. That was smart. It showed he could laugh at himself.
Yeah, definitely softened his image, reminded everyone he's funny. And of course, Mission Impossible kept proving he was a box office draw.
Yeah, exactly. It showed he could get through tough times and come out even stronger. And then you have Top Gun, Maverick. He didn't just do a sequel, he made this cultural event. That worked for, different generations.
Yeah, that movie was massive. Box office records, great reviews, everyone was talking about it.
And what's interesting about Maverick, it played on that nostalgia, but it also felt fresh and exciting. And I think a lot of that is because Cruise insisted on practical effects.
You mean those fighter jet scenes? They were unreal. They felt so real. You could tell it wasn't just CGI.
Exactly. At a time when everything is CGI, Cruise's commitment to doing things for real was like a breath of fresh air. It's like he created this immersive experience that people really wanted.
So he's not just making movies, he's creating experiences. And that leads us to what some call the Cruise method, this legendary work ethic, his attention to every little detail.
It's more than stunts. It's about pushing what you can do in filmmaking, from the script to the directing to all the technical parts.
The book is full of stories from people who've worked with him, talking about how professional and dedicated he is. Like when he learned to fly a helicopter for Mission Impossible Fallout, he didn't just take a few lessons, he became a certified pilot.
It's that wanting it to be real, that's what makes him different. He's not going to just phone it in. He wants to truly become those roles.
And it goes beyond his own acting. He's really hands-on as a producer, too, in every little detail.
It's like he's conducting an orchestra, making sure every part works together to make the biggest impact.
I like that. It's like he's crafting these experiences, pushing the boundaries of what we can see on screen, and he's not slowing down at all.
Nope. He's in his 7th decade in Hollywood and still taking risks, still pushing the limits. He's even talking about filming in space.
And you know what? If anyone can pull it off, it's him. So we have a guy who has faced all these challenges, become this huge icon, dealt with controversy, and he's always reinventing himself. It's a pretty amazing story.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder, what keeps him going? What are his motivations? And what will his legacy be? We'll look into all that as we keep going with this deep dive into Tom Cruise. You know, it really makes you think, what drives a guy like Tom Cruise? Is it that he just loves to entertain? Or does he need to prove something? Or maybe it's like deeper than that. Like he needs to push what humans are even capable of.
I'm kind of leaning towards that last one. He is constantly testing his limits, physically and creatively. It's like he's trying to find out what's possible, not just for himself, but for movies in general.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And it brings us back to that Cruise method we were talking about. It's not just about techniques. It's more like a whole philosophy. It's how he approaches everything in filmmaking.
Right. It's like this insane attention to detail, that commitment to making things real. That's what sets him apart. It's not just the stunts. It's every little thing. The way a character walks, the lighting in a scene.
And it's not just him either. He gets everyone around him to be just as dedicated. The crew, the other actors, everyone. I've heard so many stories about how he pushes people to be their best.
Yeah.
To work harder than they ever thought they could.
So he elevates the whole production. Everyone's trying to be excellent because he is.
Exactly. And that's what makes those amazing moments in his movies, the scenes you just can't forget.
Like that scene in Rogue Nation where he's hanging off the plane during takeoff. It was real. He actually did that. It blows my mind.
It shows how fearless he is, how much he's willing to risk, all for the sake of his art. But it's also about trust. He trusts the people around him, the stunt team, the director, to keep him safe. And you can see that trust up on the screen.
Yeah, you feel the tension in those scenes. You know it's real. There's real danger. And that just makes it more exciting. But it's not all action, right? He brings that same energy to his dramatic roles, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about Born on the 4th of July. He completely changed himself for that role, physically and emotionally. Spent months with Vietnam vets, learning about their experiences, their pain, their struggles.
And you can see all of that in the movie. It's such a raw, powerful performance. No wonder he got an Oscar nomination.
Exactly. He's not just an action star. He's a seriously talented actor.
But
people forget that because action is so big and spectacular.
It's like those huge explosive scenes overshadow everything else, the subtle stuff, the emotion he brings to the characters. But does he ever get tired? This guy's been going nonstop for like 40 years. Doesn't he want to just relax?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe the challenge itself is what relaxes him. Like pushing himself is what gives him energy.
So chilling out for Tom Cruise is hanging off a building or flying a helicopter. That's a different kind of relaxation.
It is. And it's that unique view he has, that drive, that's made him so huge in Hollywood. But we got to remember, he's not working alone. He's got this whole team, writers, directors, stunt people, special effects. They all contribute to the final movie.
Right. He might be the face we see, but there are tons of talented people behind the scenes making it all happen.
And that's something we forget about Hollywood sometimes. It's all about collaboration, and Cruise seems to get that. It's not just a star, he's a leader. He inspires people to be their best.
That's a pretty great legacy, isn't it?
For sure. And it makes you think about what success really is. Is it about what you do on your own, or is it building something bigger, inspiring other people?
Now, those are some good questions to think about. We'll be back to talk more about Tom Cruise's amazing career after this.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what drives Tom Cruise, his dedication, his impact on the film industry. But I kind of want to look at the bigger picture here. Like, what is it about him that people all over the world connect with?
That's a good question. I think it's partly because he represents these values that everyone kind of admires, you know, hard work, never giving up, pushing your limits.
It's like he's saying, hey, anything's possible if you put your mind to it.
Right. And he does it with this charm, this charisma. Like, it's all easy for him, but we know how much work goes into it.
And you got to give him credit. He wants to entertain people. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He can laugh at himself. Remember Tropic Thunder?
Yeah.
And he clearly loves all the spectacle.
Yeah, he gets that movies are about escapism, giving people a few hours to just enjoy themselves. And he always delivers on that.
And he's been doing it for over 40 years. That's a long time in Hollywood, especially with how much it changes. So what do you think? What will Tom Cruise's legacy be? That's a tough one. But I think he'll be remembered as a true cinema icon. He changed action movies forever. What he does with stunts is unreal. And he's inspired so many other actors and filmmakers.
And you can't forget his impact on pop culture. All those catchphrases, those unforgettable moments.
His influence goes way beyond his movies. He changed how we see action movies, what it means to be a star, what cinema can even do.
That's quite a legacy. And it makes me wonder, what's next for him? Hollywood's done. He's talking about filming in space. What else is there left?
Well, that's what keeps him so interesting, right? He's never satisfied, always looking for the next challenge.
So maybe his legacy isn't finished yet. Maybe it's not about what he's done, but about always pushing forward.
I think you're right. Tom Cruise's story is about ambition, about breaking limits, about what humans are capable of.
It's like a reminder that we can all do great things if we put in the effort, face the challenges, and never give up. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see a Tom Cruise movie filmed on Mars.
Wouldn't that be something?
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Tom Cruise. I hope you enjoyed learning about him as much as I did.
It's been great exploring this with you.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep chasing those dreams.